world isn't in Syria or Iraq. It's in Indian-administered Kashmir, where fighting has continued for 30 years. Despite more than 500,000 soldiers stationed here, there's still no peace. Instead, Kashmir may have reached a violent tipping point. I'm Steve Chow. On this episode, 101 East reports from Kashmir to investigate whether India's hardline policies are creating a new generation of fighters.
On any given Friday, in any given month, anger floods the streets of Indian-administered Kashmir. In the country's only Muslim-majority state, children and masked teenagers demand independence. Women raise their fists to call for freedom. And every Friday, the response from the Indian government is the same.
We can see movement of the security forces and there's tear gas up ahead. People are just running.
Here, police and protesters clash routinely and violently. For decades, the state has been a tinderbox, wedged between nuclear rivals India and Pakistan. It's claimed by both and manipulated by many. India accuses Pakistan of training and arming separatist rebels. Activists say India is committing human rights abuses. And in the middle, we find ourselves trapped with the people of Kashmir.
We're trying to make our way to the police line. It's just way too dangerous on this side with the protesters. We're in the back alleys and we can hear the tear gas and the shells going off just one street over.
This family narrowly escaped a tear gas shell fired into their home. The region has been fighting for separation from India since the late 80s. Some here want to join Pakistan. Others want an independent state. And just a few months ago, this conflict reached a tipping point. The trigger, the death of 22-year-old rebel Burhan Wani, killed by security forces on July 8th last year. His family says he'd been fighting since he was 15 after being beaten by the police.
तो हम कौन सा टेररिस्ट ठहरे? टेररिस्ट है वो इंडियन आर्मी है और ये सब कश्मीरी लोग जानते हैं कि इंडियन आर्मी टेररिस्ट है.
Burhan was a rebel commander and an icon for Kashmiris, with thousands of followers on social media. His killing sent shockwaves through the valley. His funeral, attended by hundreds of thousands of people, became a call to arms. Protesters took to the streets, again shouting for an end to Indian rule.
हम तब तक हार नहीं मानेंगे जब तक वो पूरे कश्मीर को आजाद नहीं करेंगे. हम अपना हक मांगते हैं क्योंकि यहाँ पे बच्चों को आज कत्लेआम किया जाता है। यहाँ पे घरों में सीआरपी पुलिस घुस जाती है और जवानों को घर से निकालकर गोली मार देते हैं।
The government's response was swift.
There was curfew, there was restrictions on communication gag, on press gag, media gag. India had literally declared war on the people of Kashmir for those 6 months.
Newspaper offices were raided and shut down. Thousands of people were locked up as protests continued for months. Separatist leaders were placed under house arrest or in solitary confinement. But this just fueled the fire. Police say around 80 people were killed during the turmoil. But activists estimate that more than 100 died.
12 साल का बच्चा शहीद हो गया, इसलिए हम प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे हैं। हम अपना हक मांगते हैं, नहीं किसी से भीख मांगते।
But it wasn't just the dead who made international headlines. This time, it was those who had survived. At least 1,000 people suffered severe eye injuries after being shot by police pellet guns. Each time security forces fire a pellet gun, it sprays around 300 of these tiny little pellets indiscriminately into the air. This is what is making people blind here in Kashmir. Wards were overrun with patients who had lead pellets lodged inside their eyes. And it wasn't just protesters coming in. It was women and children. Surgeons at Srinagar's SMHS hospital operated 24 hours a day during the height of the violence. 80% of their patients were under the age of 25. Like Ifra Shakur, we found the 14-year-old schoolgirl with her grandfather and aunt waiting to see a doctor.
अब्दुल जी, आप बता सकते हैं आप यहाँ आज क्यों आए?
हाँ, हमारी तो इस बेटी को पैलेट लग गए हैं 31 तारीख को। बस दाएं आँख से कुछ थोड़ा 10% देख सकती है, दाएं आँख से, बाएं आँख से कुछ नहीं देख सकती।
Ifra has already had 2 surgeries. This will be her third and her last chance to see again.
बस अगर इसको लाइट नहीं आई तो फिर क्या करेगी ये बच्ची? ये तो पढ़ रही थी, इसका एम तो डॉक्टर बनना था, क्या करेगी?
There is chaos outside the doctor's office. People are desperate to see him and they're pushing to the front of the queue. Many, like Ifra, have been waiting here for hours. In the jostling, she's becoming anxious. All she can see are shadows. Finally, it's her turn. The doctor admits her to the ward for surgery. But the prospect of yet another operation terrifies Ifra. Ifra's surgery is not until the morning, so her family will stay the night. The operation will be painful, but she has no choice. If she doesn't have the surgery now, she may never see again. On the day Ifra was injured, she was at home studying for her 8th grade exams. Suddenly, she heard shelling.
I asked my mother what was happening outside. I didn't know what was going on. I closed my books and went out.
There had been protests in her village ever since Burhan Wani was killed. Worried, she says she went to the gate to look for her brother. Instead, she saw 2 policemen. Her instinct was to flee.
I tried to run, but they caught me by my hair and dragged me. And then they beat me with their baton on my arm. But they still weren't satisfied, so they shot me with a pellet gun. After I was hit, I couldn't see anything. Blood was coming out of my eyes. When I touched my eyes, I could feel blood on my hands.
Ifra's aunt Rubina was the first to see her.
She was screaming. In the ambulance, she started vomiting. I was terrified when I first saw her. There was blood coming out of her eyes, her ears, her nose. I couldn't look at her. I was scared. I thought she would die.
Ifra's body was riddled with pellets, but it was her eyes the doctors were most worried about. She was blinded, with 3 pellets in her right eye and 2 in her left.
I cry because God has not given me any children, so they are my children. That's why it hurts so much. She's my niece. What has happened to her?
After I was hit, all I could think about was seeing again. So I could study, get around, go out with friends, teachers, my family, neighbors, so that I could walk on my own. I used to pray to God to make me see again so I can be a doctor. I am so angry with those men. I just want to kill them all.
Ifra is not alone in her rage. It's the same anger that has driven generations of young Kashmiris to pick up weapons against India. I've tracked down some of them.
Through a contact, the boys have asked me to meet them in this very remote field because they say it's too dangerous to meet in town. Hi, I'm Karishma from Aljazeera.
The young men have asked us to hide their identities. They regularly protest and throw rocks at security forces, so they are wanted by the police. Jan, which is not his real name, says he's a 24-year-old college graduate with a commerce degree.
I am a stone pelter and I am proud.
I'm a stone pelter and I'm proud. But why are we stone pelters? The reason is that whenever we leave the house, our parents have no idea if their son is coming back. They live in fear, and we also live with this fear.
As a child, he says he watched security forces raid homes and take away his neighbors and friends. Some never returned. Then when he was 17, he says, they came for him.
When they took me, they stripped me fully naked. And there was another boy with me. What they did to us, I can't even tell you.
Ever since then, Jan says he's thought about joining the rebels.
India can't break us. He kill us, but don't break us.
Our young people are blinded. They're missing limbs. Seeing all this, we get frustrated, and in that frustration we say, no. Now we have to do something. The anger inside me is boiling so much that I hope I don't do something that every Indian will remember. When I think about what I should do, I think maybe I should be a suicide bomber.
These are chilling words. India blames Pakistan for inciting boys like Jan. But many here say it's the Indian government that is pushing young Kashmiris towards radicalization. Activists have recorded a catalogue of extrajudicial killings, torture in custody and rape they say were committed by security forces. More than 8,000 people from the valley are missing. The government says they're living in neighbouring Pakistan, but rights groups believe that many are buried right here in Indian-administered Kashmir, in thousands of unmarked and mass graves. To investigate these allegations, I requested interviews with India's National Security Advisor, the Defence Minister, Home Affairs Minister and military personnel, but they either declined or did not respond. I did get through to SP Vaid, one of the most senior police officers in the state and now the Director General of the force.
Hello.
Hello, good morning, Mr. Vaid. This is Karishma from Aljazeera. How are you?
Good morning, how are you?
I just wanted to call and make a interview appointment with you.
Okay, tomorrow we'll do it.
Okay, what time, sir?
Let's say around 11.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Look forward to meeting you. But only minutes later, his office calls back.
I am Nasir Khan, Private Secretary to Dr. SP Vaid. We are very sorry, ma'am, he can't give it to you, sir.
But I just spoke to him 10 minutes ago.
Inconvenience is regretted, ma'am.
So you said yourself this keeps happening. But we do interview Naeem Akhtar, a state government minister and spokesman for the ruling party. I ask him if the allegations of abuse are true.
That is the perception, and I am not in a position to deny it or to substantiate it.
But then he goes further, suggesting the allegations are fabricated to incite violence in the valley.
It seems that the situation was orchestrated on the basis of certain imaginary assaults made by the state of India or the government.
In 2010, I read him reports of the alleged torture of Kashmiris in police custody. The majority of youth alleged torture, with independent medical examination confirming that many had their fingernails pulled and bones crushed. We were hung by our ankles and had chili rubbed in our wounds. Are these stories that should be investigated?
Wherever there are specific instances, we'll certainly investigate them.
What about the victims of the security forces who were not involved in protests? What would you say to them?
They will be investigated, compensated.
When can we expect the investigations to take place and decisions to be reached?
I can't put a time frame on that.
Could it be months or years? Sir?
I don't know.
Back at SMH's hospital, Ifra is just coming out of surgery. She's still groggy from the anaesthetic. Surgeons were forced to leave a pellet inside her left eye. Removing it could leave her permanently blind. Ifra will be discharged soon, but it will take weeks to find out if the operation has been successful. A few days later, we travelled to Pulwama district to check in on her and her family. Over lunch, I can see that Ifra is feeling better, but her grandfather says she has stopped studying. and she hardly eats. She's no longer the carefree child she used to be.
Before this, she was very humble, but now she's become very cranky, very temperamental. She doesn't listen to anyone. Her sister, her mother, her grandmother, her aunt. She talks back to all of them.
I hate the soldiers and everyone, even people at home. I just feel like fighting with everyone. I don't like people talking. I don't like to talk too much. I don't like people sitting next to me. I used to go to school. I used to do everything. But now I can't do anything. All I do is fight.
Ifra's family doesn't know how to help her, and they're too frightened to complain to the police about something their own officers have done.
No. What police report will we? Against who will we file it? We don't have any faith in the police, and we shouldn't.
Security forces here are protected from prosecution by a law called the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. No officer can be charged without permission from the Indian government.
Today it happened to me, tomorrow it can happen to another person. That's the situation here.
If we complain, who knows? Maybe they'll pick up my little nephew and put him in jail. That's why we're scared and we won't complain. This is the reason why young people say, I'll join the militancy. When security forces beat elderly people, young men, small girls or mothers, it makes their blood boil.
In Srinagar's main mosque, separatist leaders continue to call on Kashmiris to resist Indian rule.
मुलाजिम आसो चाहे इस डॉक्टर आसो इंजीनियर आसो ताजिर आसो तिकाज यदि इस पन्ने माश तलाश करो तते इस पर फर्ज या तहरीक की आबियारी करन इंशाअल्लाह.
Umar Farooq has been the spiritual head of Kashmiri Muslims since he was 17, after his father was assassinated. He spearheaded the separatist movement for more than 20 years.
As far as the people of Jammu and Kashmir are concerned, there's absolutely clarity what we want. We want freedom, we want azad, we want complete independence where the people of Kashmir are given their free will to decide their future.
He says Kashmiris want the referendum they were promised almost 70 years ago, allowing them to vote on whether they stay with India, join Pakistan, or become an independent nation. But the Indian government says this is out of the question.
There is absolutely no democracy here. There is no rule of law here. There is no accountability here. It's not a secret that, the highest concentration of troops anywhere in the world is in Jammu and Kashmir. And these troops are not here to fight militancy, but they are here to fight the people. We don't want to see another generation of young people, go towards violence and go towards, death and destruction.
But for many, it's already too late. Before we leave, another young rebel is killed by security forces. His death once again used to galvanize support for the anti-India movement.
There is only one solution. There is only one solution.
This time, their martyr is 21-year-old Sameer Rasool Dar, an engineering student who joined the rebels just a month ago. But away from the masses, Samir's family is grieving for a child, not a martyr.
No parent should see the coffins of their children. This is the most painful thing in the world. I can tell you from my experience today, this is the most painful thing. Everybody, for God's sake, do something to give these children a chance to live. They are no less than the other children in the world. They dream very high. Give them a chance.